Okay, so we hear this term thrown around all the time, right? Active citizen. But what does that actually mean? I mean, is it just about showing up to vote every couple of years, or is there, more to the story? Let's dive in and really break it down.
So let's kick things off with a big one. When you think about being a good citizen, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's voting, right? That's kind of the classic image. But is that it? Is that the whole picture? We're going to find out. Yeah, you've probably guessed it by now. The answer is way bigger than just that. Look, voting is absolutely crucial. It's a cornerstone of democracy, no doubt. But the whole idea of what it means to be a citizen has really changed over time. It's not just some simple checklist anymore. It's evolved into something much more, active. And here's why that matters. Think about it like this. A country can have the most perfect constitution, the fairest laws on the books. All of that is just the blueprint, right? It's just the plan on paper. For a democracy to actually flourish, to come to life, it needs people. It needs us, engaged and involved. All right, so to really get a handle on where we are today, we kind of have to look back at where we started. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, when people talked about citizenship, they were almost always talking about one thing: your legal rights. It was all about what the state owed you, what you were entitled to. This whole idea was really laid out back in 1950 by a sociologist named T.H. Marshall, and he broke it down into these three core pillars. First up, you've got civil rights, the basics, equal justice, personal freedom. Then you have political rights, which is where things like voting come in. And finally, he talked about social rights, stuff like access to healthcare and education, things you need to actually participate fully in society. But here's the really interesting part. Even Marshall, the guy who literally wrote the book on this rights-based view, knew it wasn't the whole story. He said that having all these legal rights is, and I'm quoting here, of utmost importance but insufficient. See, he knew that a flourishing society needs more than just people with rights on paper. It needs people who actually do something. And that right there, that was the spark. That single idea kicked off this massive shift in how we think about citizenship. The conversation started moving away from what you have to what you do. The big buzzword was no longer rights, it was action. You can really see this evolution play out over time. We start back in the 1950s, right, with Marshall's focus on legal rights. Then, fast forward to 1972, and you've got thinkers like Verba and Nye, who are all about action with intent to influence. And that change in focus, well, it leads us straight to where we are today, with this idea of participatory democracy. So, what's the deal with participatory democracy? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the idea that we, as citizens, aren't supposed to just be sitting on the sidelines watching things happen. The whole point is to get people involved, actually discussing, debating, and helping to shape the decisions that impact all of us. Okay, but here's where it gets even more interesting. Even when we're talking about action, the word active can mean a couple of different things. It's not just one big concept. You can kind of split it into two main categories that sometimes overlap. So on the one hand, you have what you could call the political focus. This is the stuff we often think of first: protesting, voting, campaigning for a candidate. But then on the other hand, there's the community focus. This is all about volunteering, supporting your neighbors, and just generally making your local community stronger. And here's the key. Both of these are absolutely vital forms of being an active citizen. So how do we tie all this together? Well, a really good modern definition comes from the European Commission. They say active citizenship is basically participating in civil, community, and/or political life. But, and this is a really important but, they add that it has to be done with mutual respect, nonviolence, and it has to be in line with human rights and democracy. That part's non-negotiable. Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on what active citizenship is. Now let's get to the really big question. So what? Why does any of this actually matter? Why do people say this is like the very heartbeat of a healthy democracy? Well, you can think of active citizens as the immune system of a democracy. They're the ones keeping an eye on things, holding government accountable, and asking the hard questions. They're the engine that creates positive change, but they can also be the brakes when things are heading in the wrong direction. And in places that aren't democratic, this kind of citizen engagement is literally the foundation for any resistance. And on a day-to-day level, they're the people who show up and make our communities better places to live. So, when you boil it all down, what's the bottom line? It's pretty simple, actually. A democracy isn't some machine you can just set up and let run on its own. Its health, its strength, its ability to even survive, it all comes down to the engagement of its citizens.
It all comes down to us.
So I want to leave you with one final thought. Now that we've unpacked all of this, from the big political actions to the small community ones, here's a question just for you. What's one active step, no matter how big or small, that you could take this week?